Republicans are set to unveil the tax reform plan on Wednesday. Joining us now on set, House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy. The optics of a Halloween release, leader. I don't think that's what trick or treat. It's so many, so many
after Halloween.
So many. Yeah, I know. That's why you're doing it on the 1st instead of the 31st. But one thing we do know is that a lot of the details have been kept secret, I think, to some extent, intentionally, because you're going to mobilize every lobbying group or special interest on the planet that is affected by any of the loophole closures, and it's going to be difficult. So does that go into the thinking that you want to keep it under wraps until you're almost ready to vote on it?
Look, it's not easy to do tax reform, especially with your eliminating loopholes, but I argue against that it's kept secret. Think about this. We put our framework out before the election. We've put out all this year, as you've watched, we're going to lower the corporate rate to 20%. We're going to double the standard deduction, meaning a husband and wife or a couple, they get $24,000 tax-free instead of $12,000. The first $24,000 tax-free, single person instead of $6,000 now get $12,000. We're going to shrink the 7 rates down to 3. We're going to lower small business to pass through to 25. That's a 40% decrease. So I think we've been pretty open. Now the final details.
Just give us a detail that there will not be a fourth
no,
tax rate
they're still
added.
working. This is what we put out. So people can work out the details, look at the others. I mean, the only fourth bracket I really support is
how many brackets are is a secret.
No. I mean, people argue back and forth. Look, I think there should be a bracket, and this could pay for the rest of it just on calendar models. Increase that bracket, and you could pay for the rest of it.
Oh, calendar model. You mean, no.
Yeah.
If there was,
that would be news.
But if there was a fourth bracket, what do you think it should be?
Some talk of a fourth bracket.
What do you think it should be pegged at? What's the conversation? Take us inside.
Take us inside.
No, take us inside.
I will wait till Ways and Means comes out. That's their role. I believe this. The simpler, the better. I don't think we should punish people for being successful. I think we should encourage that. I think small business creates more jobs than anything. I started my first one when I was 20 years old. So I want to enhance the growth. And when I look at the overall package, and when you look at 2 and you look at scoring it, people are going to keep more. There's going to be greater jobs. Payroll's going to go up. Just the lowering of corporate rate increases household by 4,000. I mean, this is a pro-growth when we're coming after our second quarter at 3% growth. And think of those last 8 years, some of our lowest ever, averaging 1.8. This is a fundamental change. And I haven't even discussed about repatriation, bringing those trillions of dollars back over to invest in American business. I think this is going to be a very positive.
What do you make of the reports that suggest it does not pay for itself and by a wide margin?
It does not pay. See, the argument that more people working with higher salaries, paying more revenue does not pay for itself. I mean, to me, that's a Democratic talking point. We've proved time and again, if you let people keep more of what they earn, you let them make their investments, you keep the incentive. I mean, if I go back to the way government looks, they say if we lower the rate to bring money back overseas, that costs America money. We know that's not true.
But we're at 1.5 trillion. The specifics are there. You're at 1.5 trillion is all the dynamic scoring that they're doing, and
we have to have it
signed
paid
off
for.
on it. But you got 4 trillion you got to pay for, and it's not done yet. You haven't got all that. I mean, there are going to be some unhappy people in some sacred cow industries that are going to fight tooth and nail. The housing industry's already trying to mobilize. I don't know what happens with 401ks. That looks like it's no longer going to be.
Look, we're going to up the rate on what people can give in 401ks because we know the importance of that. Your viewers understand. I apologize. Let me tell you. I'm not going to up the rate. We're going to up how much someone can put into it.
Not tax deductible, though.
Look, I'll let them write it out. I think to me, my first investment was in a 401k, and I didn't have any money, and it allowed me, and pre-tax encouraged me to do it.
And by the way, at a time when the nation is facing a retirement savings shortage and pensions are going away, so you're in favor of actually keeping
We are
them.
more successful the more individuals can become self-insured with their own money. You're not looking for government. You got more money, more capital working for the country. I mean, it is such a positive.
Like an IRA where you don't get the deduction, but it gets to grow tax deferred.
But like a 5
Look, I don't know if my kids are younger. I think the Roth is great for them. In my age, it's a much
leader
different.
on big editorial, great editorial, I thought, on Saturday from the Wall Street Journal about where we are right now at 39, whatever for the top rate. You add in the Obamacare, which the Republicans folded on, trying to get rid of that because of class warfare.
Now, let's be fair.
Because of
I
class
serve in
warfare.
the House. The House did not.
Okay, the House didn't, but the rest did. So you're back to about 50. You get to keep about half of what you make. And now the whole point of this exercise that you're doing right now, it's good to help corporations. But the point of it is you're leaving more money in the private sector. Why would you actually raise taxes on? And if you talk top 10%, they pay 60 or 70% of the.
And I don't think they should. But think about what we do.
That's what's going to happen.
Okay.
To satisfy people that the Democrats they're not going to be satisfied anyway because they're going to say it's you got estate taxes, you got corporate. It's still going to be. They're still going to call it a big boon for the rich.
You haven't walked through the plan. What we do? We eliminate the AMT. You know how big that is when you eliminate the AMT? That's worth more than when you go through the home and others. We double the standard deduction. Only 1/3 of America itemizes. There's going to be fewer people that have to itemize now. But you still have the choice to do it. When you make it simpler, when we lower the rates, at the end of the day, if people look at the overall tax bill, first thing they're going to say, this is pro-growth. Right. This is going to create more jobs. Those who have jobs today are going to get higher pay. It's going to incentivize entrepreneurs for more small business, the lowest rate they've had in more than 40 years. This, to me, those who come out and argue against it are angry because we're closing the loopholes. And that's how we're paying for it in your question earlier. If you're going to lower the rates the way you pay for it, and the whole reason we have all these loopholes is our tax code has been crazy. Right. It's been uncompetitive for us around the world, so we have to lower it.
I'm going to talk about Corker for a minute. It was on last week. You weren't here for Corker, but he said that the stuff you're doing with individual rates is expensive and doesn't really do much. The pass-through stuff probably isn't necessary because most companies aren't at 25. And all these things, if you would just do corporate and go to 15, instead of trying to satisfy critics or to play the politics of a middle-class tax cut, when it's not really that significant. Just do the growth side of things. Go to 15, because if you end up at 25, it's not even worth doing.
But how do you just do corporate and not do pass-throughs? Small businesses
because most people are below 25 anyway.
Most of them are below. You know that.
Yes,
below 25 anyway.
It gives the incentive. It has the ability to move forward. They create more business than any corporation has ever.
But you don't think it's a giveaway to the wealthy?
On letting people keep more of what they earn and double the standard? No, not at all.
So all of those companies that effectively there is a group that's going to go from effectively 39% right now down to 25, and that's.
The language we put in, you'll watch what it is. But how many small businesses? I sit and walk around this. I see the pictures of the NASDAQs of how many small businesses started in a garage and now have thousands of employees. You know what? If you create a disincentive that you only for the big guys, you're not going to succeed. I started with a small business. That's what paid my way through college. I took a risk, and I knew the difference that it makes.
Got to ask you about this.
Sure.
Given that you're here pitching the tax plan, this is tax week to some degree in terms of really launching this. However, there's also this other big headline that may have already overtaken Washington, at least, which is Paul Manafort.
The uranium. Okay, sorry. I thought you meant the uranium.
No, I thought Hillary.
Didn't you think that? No. This is money laundering, like from 2008.
Hold on. So, Paul Manafort surrendering, Rick Gates surrendering. This Mueller investigation clearly is heating up in a meaningful way. This is the conversation that's happening in Washington. First of all, what do you make of it?
Well, it'll make news, but let's see what this is first about. We don't know what the issue is of why they're saying to come in. Did this have anything to do with the president? I don't know. See what it is. But the one thing I do know is President Trump won this election based on going out to the American public, talking about job creation, talking about exactly what we're doing this week when it comes to taxes.
Are you concerned at all about Russia meddling or interfering in the election?
I think Russia meddles in everybody's election. I don't believe Russia did anything to influence whether Trump got elected or not from the basis that the American people decided from there. But what does concern me is how much, and I just found out last week when you read about what Hillary did, spending millions of dollars doing some dossier, and is Mueller using that to go and look at this investigation? We know that's not even true. So yes, it overrides a lot of different things, but I look at this. The most important thing we can do is get this economy moving.
How do you feel about the fact that the dossier was originally created effectively by a supporter, or at least was created by supporters of the GOP?
It never went forward beyond there, and Hillary took it to the next level and took it public. Spent millions of dollars and now says she didn't know what she spent it on. Her campaign manager said, well, I didn't know what we were doing. How do you spend millions of dollars in a campaign and not know? And why do you have to have your attorney with you when you're answering this?
The great thing
I think there's a lot of questions.
Hillary's former campaign manager, Brian Fallon, says, it's Oppo research. I would have done 10 times as much. But then you look back at the amount of time spent on Donald Trump Jr. with this ridiculous, remember the meeting there?
Oh, yeah.
And that was treason. That was the death penalty being called for.
But do you also remember President Obama, as president running for re-election, telling Medvedev, hey, tell Putin I'll be more flexible after the next election? To me, that is very concerning.
The Wall Street Journal's editorial page today more than suggested, but effectively called for the resignation of Mueller.
Do you think that last week? That wasn't.
That was over the weekend.
Over the
right?
weekend. I apologize.
Yeah.
Do you think that that's appropriate?
Look, I read that afterwards. I think it raises issues, the people that he put on this investigation. When I look to attorneys, I believe in the rule of law. But he was looking at hiring people that had played in politics, had given their money in politics, especially from one side or the other. So that raises a lot of doubt. At the end of the day, you want to be able to bring out a report that people are going to trust. You cannot start a structure that makes it look political to think that people aren't going to think it's a political outcome. That's the problem to start out with in this. And then if he's basing an investigation on a dossier that we know is not true, that is funded mainly political, millions of dollars, and an organization that tried to hide what they were doing, I think that makes the outcome questionable at the same time.
But would you have a problem if other members of Congress or the Senate were supported in part with Russian money? Would that be problematic to you?
That would be a major problem. Look, well, one thing I see what Putin wants to do, he wants to discredit our form of government. He wants to discredit the media. He wants to do all sorts of things like that. He does it around Europe. He does it around here as well.
The president wants to discredit the media, too.
Look, I think there's nothing wrong with an individual pointing out whether things right or wrong. And this is not the president. Look at what the Harvard study in the first 100 days. They look at just CNN. They took at every show that they did about President Trump, 92% of it was negative. Now, is that true or not? That's a Harvard study looking at CNN. They want to base something what they're going forward. You can stand up for what is true and what is not. And from my argument, a person has a right to do that.
There's the tax cut. We've had some CEOs leader, that have done the calculations just based on what would happen to their bottom line.
They can't because we've never done.
No, I know, but the bottom line goes. No, the bottom line goes up for many of them, which brings down valuations, which it sort of explains why the market's up 25% in the past year or so. There's anticipation for this. If it doesn't happen, and I don't know what the chances are once these lobbyists get their hands on this, right?
That's why you don't want the lobbyists.
You think the guys in the Senate this time have the intestinal fortitude to withstand the criticism from the right and the left on this? Do you think will this get done, you think?
That's my prayer every night.
I just want to get back to our special guest, House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy. We've been talking taxes with him. Also, this news just crossing the wire that Paul Manafort and Rick Gates have reportedly been told to surrender as part of the Mueller investigation. Are you worried that that's going to overshadow the tax issue this week?
No, tax cuts are too important to the American public. Let's find out why this is. All last week, is it overshadowing the tax plan of what we find out now that Hillary's campaign did to this president and never came forth with it, spending millions of dollars making a false dossier that who knows if Mueller is utilizing this to go forward, so we know the basis is not right. Look, we've got to get the country working again. That is really what the campaign was all about, creating more jobs. Right. And you look, the second quarter now at 3% growth, something President Obama had never been able to achieve. All right? And so we're making great progress. The reg reform that we did, and now tax cuts to the American public, I think is the next step that will put us on the right path.
Do you believe, as our Treasury Secretary has suggested, that if we don't get the tax cuts, that the big portion of the stock market gains will disappear?
I think a lot of the gains are the anticipation and the expectation that we get the tax cuts. Because what? Look, corporate rate, the highest in the world, trillions of dollars sitting overseas because our tax code forces you to do that, to not invest back in America. The challenge it is for a small business to start a new job. Yes, regulatory, that President Trump has done a fantastic job cutting it faster than Ronald Reagan was able to do. You look at the 14 CRAs, only one has ever been successful in the history of America until President Trump. So yes, this to me is the anticipation, and I think it would affect the stock market if we don't get it done.
Leader, let me ask you just about how the taxes reform bill is going through. We had former Senator Judd Gregg, who was here last week, and he was involved with the 1986 tax cuts. He said his concern with this is, A, that it won't step on enough toes, won't infuriate enough different people, because he basically said you have to tick off everybody and take away everything, and that's how you know it's fair. His other concern is that there aren't Democrats who are involved, like there were back in 1986, and his concern is that this will be undone potentially. If something gets passed, it could be undone with Democrats in control, just like we're watching with Obamacare, kind of getting rolled back piece by piece.
You know, in the private conversation I have with Democrats, they realize our tax code is so wrong, they want to vote for it. If you read the headlines last week, this is what was going on in the Democratic conference. Nancy Pelosi was standing up, telling her conference to vote no, and if the Republicans can't get this done, we can win the majority next. Instead of caring about where the country is going, she's trying to put political pressure on her members not to vote for it. And if Democrats didn't want to vote for it, why would she even bring it up? She's trying to pressure them, all using politics. Instead of putting people before politics, she's putting politics before the people.
Does that mean you think you will get some Democratic votes?
I think we will. She's a good arm twister on their side, and I think she'll try to twist every arm, but the power of this idea, I think, will move forward much stronger.
Two other things in the news that are going to happen this week in Washington, and I wanted to get your take on. One is we may hear from the president about a new Fed chair.
Mm-hmm. Well, he said he will.
In this parlor game of who may be the next Fed chair, do you have a particular view?
I think the president has looked at a lot of good individuals, very capable of doing the job. This is a president's choice, confirmation of the Senate. Let him make the choice, and I'm happy with the people that he's talking about right now.
Would you be happy with one over another? Are you more hawkish or more dovish?
Look, he's had the discussions with them. It's his decision to make.
Names?
Why should I? I don't have a play in this, so I trust what the president will do. Look, I've watched the selections that the president made. You look at his cabinet. You look at his national security team. Probably the best national security team in my lifetime. Right. This individual makes good decisions when he's given all the information. And I think he's spending his time looking at this. And this is an individual that comes from the business world. Right. I trust his decision.
The other big thing that's happening in Washington this week in terms of business is a number of the big tech companies, social media companies, including Facebook. There are going to be hearings about the Russia investigation, about Russia potentially trying to manipulate people in terms of how this election came out. And there's a bigger question about whether the big tech companies are ultimately going to be regulated by Washington. Where do you land on that?
I don't look for creating more government, but what I do think is you've got to have transparency. Because what I've watched big tech do many times is kind of run it in a different manner. Kind of against Republicans in manner of what to do. I think transparency. If somebody's putting something up, just as we put something up in a campaign, say where it's coming from and let the public decide whether that information is worthy or not.
So you guys really did, Senate and House, you did the budget thing. I'm shocked, almost fainted. You're on track to actually do this, to have it done, maybe by Thanksgiving and then signed before the end of the year.
Look, you're a person that believes in metrics. If you just put the metrics up of this Congress and you compare it to, in modern history, any first year of a presidency, this Congress, not this Senate,
why do we not
has
feel
passed more bills.
Why do we not feel? I guess because
it didn't get through the Senate.
Because Obamacare didn't get through the Senate. But tax, to me, is the key to get the economy moving. It is a tax cut to the hardworking taxpayers of America. It's a job creation. It's simplifying, and it's fair. The core of what everybody said they wanted.
What do you attribute the 3% growth to now? And by the way, that we should just say that's not annualized. So we should,
no, but it's okay.
I agree, but I'm just trying to understand. What do you attribute that to? Do you attribute that to Washington? Do you attribute that to the president?
Well, I contribute this. Just as you watch the stock market every day, what did the market do after the election? They saw something optimistic because they saw a change in Washington. Look what the president was able to achieve. Just the regulatory change in Washington. Look, when agencies create a new ruling and it reaches $100 million when it's scored, that's called a major ruling. Do you realize we had 82 major rulings every single year for the last 5 years? A Congressional Review Act lets you repeal some regulation. No one's ever been successful but once. This president has been successful more than 14 times.
He made it so simple for you.
We just went through.
You didn't listen. He told you all this.
But think about this.
I have the leader here. We have the leader all together.
You need to be outside the country to see the forest through the trees.
But you got to give the president credit here. I just came back from Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands, and Key West this weekend. Right. We've gone through some of the most difficult hurricanes, fires.
But still got 3%.
And you still got 3% growth,
Keep it up.
which no
We
one
got
said
room.
we could do.
Leader, thank you so
Leader,
much.
thank you.
We have to
When we
thank
come
you.
back, we have some data.
Appreciate it.
Hey there, thanks for checking out CNBC on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all of the day's biggest stories. You can also click on any of the videos around me to watch the latest from CNBC. Thanks for watching.